Hey guys, welcome back to Well Moonlight Vlogs, or hello if you're new. My name is Raven, and on this channel I like to talk about everything handmade, homemade, and cozy. This week I wanted to do something that I've actually planned for something way ahead when I was like more educated and could make the perfect video on it. But there's a lot of things going on right now that are out of our control. And I know that like there's always things that we can't control going on, but the extent that it has gone to is scary. I've been making bread at home for a few months now. I am not an expert, but I'm really comfortable with it. The first thing I thought when I saw empty bread shelves in my local grocery store was, oh my God, I'm so glad that I know how to make bread at home and that I've like been really into researching it and understanding it, because I can't imagine if I had kids to feed or myself to feed, and I just couldn't because it wasn't available. So I wanted to make a video with what I know now just to share and hopefully help someone. I think it's a very practical skill to have. Bread making is way easier than what a lot of people have led me to believe. And it's also just very heartwarming and comforting, like to smell the bread in the oven and to get that first fresh piece after it's cooled down. I feel like it's exactly what a lot of us need right now. I made this batch of bread yesterday to show you guys, and I still, like, my nerves were very soothed by the end of the process. Before we actually jump into actual bread making, I have some notes on my phone because I want to go into some of the whys, what you'll need and things like that, to sort of help you figure out what's best for you, basically. Because I know how I've been making my bread. I've been making it several times now. I'm very comfortable with the recipe. The only time I've ever messed it up was literally when I filmed it, because that's how it works. Okay, so the first thing that you'll need is pretty obvious. You're going to need flour. I personally recommend bread flour. A lot of people will. However, obviously, given the current state of events, if you can't get bread flour, all-purpose flour will do. It's not going to be as glutinous, but that's fine. As far as like having a functional loaf of bread, it might crumble a little bit more, might not have the same texture. It's still going to be bread. It's still going to be delicious. It's still going to smell amazing in your oven. I would not use self-rising flour, and I don't know anything about gluten-free bread making. That's something that I want to learn and I will learn, but right now I'm really sorry to all of my gluten intolerant friends. Bread making, this particular video on bread making, not going to help you very much. I apologize. Now, the reason why we use bread flour to make bread is because it has a higher protein content. That's going to help it have a much firmer structure. You'll be able to develop a lot more gluten out of it. It will stretch a lot more. It's very fun to play with. Also kind of nerve-wracking because I don't like things stuck to my hands. Okay, so the next thing you're going to need is water. The temperature of your water is going to matter, and it's going to affect the end result of your bread. It's not going to be a make or break thing, but I wanted to discuss it at least a little bit. Colder water is going to take longer to proof, and that's going to build up stronger flavor. I love using as cold of water as I can get. Basically, I'm about to start using ice cubes in my bread because I want cold water. Warmer water will proof faster and will be more functional if you're looking for speed, but it won't develop the same amount of flavor. If flavor is not your priority and you're looking for something that you can have in and out, use some warmer water. I wouldn't go hot. Don't use hot. You're looking at like a little bit warmer than room temperature, maybe body temp. Nothing higher than that. That I could be wrong. I'm sure there are recipes that involve like boiling. I'm not using that because I'll burn myself. Also, the amount of water is going to affect the end result. More water will provide more air bubbles, and it will basically steam inside the bread. More air bubbles, more pockets. It's really cool for certain effects. Less water will have less air bubbles, smaller air bubbles, and more of a regular texture. I tend to lean towards more water because I don't know, just really like the texture, and I just enjoy it a lot. You're going to need salt for flavor, and then obviously you're going to need yeast for a yeasted bread. You can use other rising agents such as soda or baking soda, baking powder. You could do a quick bread. For a yeasted bread, we're using yeast. And this will really help to develop the flavor. This is going to help with the proofing process. A yeasted bread is going to take longer time, but I think it's worth it. I think it's delicious. Some other things that you can add to the bread and experiment with, or even look for recipes, like for an enriched dough, or you can substitute the water with milk, you can add eggs, sugar, you can add different types of flour. There's a honey. I love adding honey to mine. You could add oil, butter, you could add different types of flour, you could add herbs, fruits, veg. Like, you could add so many things and make a really wonderful loaf. Everything you add to your dough is going to slow down your proof. I need to add that. Once again, slower proof means stronger flavor, but it will take longer. As far as the whole bread making process goes, I think we hear how long it's supposed to take to make bread and we automatically start going, I do not have time for that. You don't spend most of the time making bread actively doing something to the bread. For the most part, it's up to 10 minutes of kneading, and then you go chill out, you do whatever you were gonna do for the rest of your day. And then whenever your bread is done proofing, you put it in whatever form or tin you're gonna use, and then you go back to doing whatever it was you were doing. Like, making bread does take a lot of time, and you have to, like personally, I set alarms so that I don't forget. I also set alarms because I like to film time lapses. That takes more time than the bread making actually does, which is fine. It's worth it. I'm not gonna stop making time lapses because I have weird priorities. But coffee is good. Other than that, bread making is really simple. You don't need a mixer. I actually forgot to put this in my notes. You don't need a mixer. The only reason I use a mixer is because I have chronic pain in my neck and shoulders. I have nerve damage and spinal degeneration, and it's just not fun. I make bread often enough that I just don't see it being worth it for me to hand knead. I love hand kneading. I think it is a beautiful process. It also wrecks my body. So if you don't have a hand mixer, do not feel bad or worried. The only time you really need a hand mixer is if you're going for like a really high hydration, because it gets very sloppy. Not impossible, but I would not want to do that by hand. If you're doing it by hand, I would recommend oiling your counter and using a scraper of some sort. My counters are not smooth, and that's also part of why I don't like to knead by hand, is because dough gets stuck in the little crevices of my counter, and it's very frustrating. I wouldn't use flour on the bench the first time you use it because it just sort of makes a mess. I would rather use oil. It does sort of enrich your dough a little bit more, which isn't a bad thing. It just makes it really yummy. But yeah, oil has worked way better for me than flour. A scraper would probably help. Those burrs are doing weird things. I don't think I have anything more else to say. We are going to jump into actually making some bread now, and I will talk you through the process that I prefer. Once again, I am fairly new. I've only been doing this for a few months, and while I'm really confident in it, this is not the best way, this is not the only way. If you have a way that works for you and you're comfortable with, I would actually love to hear about it in the comments down below so that I can try it. Maybe I'll make a video on it, or so that someone else can read it and just be like,
yeah, this sounds way easier than what this chick is doing.
The goal is for us to have delicious homemade bread in a time that's really scary. So let's make some bread. I start off my bread by pouring in all of the dry ingredients. This includes 3 cups of flour, 3 teaspoons of yeast, and 3 teaspoons of salt. I put them on different sides of the bowl. I don't know if it actually helps since everything ends up being mixed, but supposedly having the salt and yeast separate will keep the salt from slowing down the yeast, but then you mix it together anyways, so that's the part that I don't fully understand. Like I said earlier, this is optional, but I do add a little bit of olive oil and a good bit of yeast. As for the water, I like to pour it in slowly and let the machine work it together. If you're going for a simple, easy to work with dough, then you're just gonna mix this together until all of the dough is held together and there's no flour sticking to the bowl. I mentioned that I like to have a pretty loose dough, so I'm going to add a little bit more than that, but I'm trying to not get carried away so that it's not super loose. And like I said, that is just a personal preference. You can add the amount that you feel. Obviously, at a certain point, you're just gonna end up with soup though, so watch out for bread soup. If you're using a machine like I am, I keep it on low and I just set a timer for about 4 to 6 minutes and I just watch it to make sure that it's not getting overworked. If you're going by hand, I would just knead gently for about 8 minutes, maybe 10, but don't go over that. And you don't have to be super aggressive. You don't have to be really fast. Just take your time, push out, don't push down. And I will be linking a video up in the right-hand corner from someone who does knead by hand. His channel is amazing if you're looking to learn about bread, and I love his channel. Whenever the timer goes off for hand kneading or for mixer kneading, I like to let it sit for a minute so that it can rest, and then I sort of just check it to see if it's done. And then I move it into a bowl with a little bit of olive oil and I shape it into something a little bit more pretty, and I just let it go into its first proof. I like to let mine proof for about 3 hours. Like I said, I like to use some pretty cold water. So yours might not take this amount of time. If you use colder water than me, it might take more time. And you're basically just looking for it to double in size. And I think you can go further than that. I don't know if it will affect the end result other than flavor. It might affect the texture. I'm honestly not sure. Then you're going to want to cover it. You can use cling wrap, tin foil, a towel. You just want to cover it so that airflow isn't attacking your bread and it doesn't develop a skin. And you're just going to leave it for a few hours on the counter. When your dough is done with its first proof, you're going to start pushing all of the air out. This is going to prevent air bubbles in the end result. Really, this first proof was just for flavor. It's not for size, so don't be too worried about it. My dough is pretty sticky, so the oil in the bowl kind of helps. And yeah, you're just going to take it out of the bowl. You're going to knead it around a little bit, pushing out all those air bubbles. You can use your fingertips to sort of like piano press it down, or I've heard it called kitty biscuits. Just push all the air bubbles out. Once all of the air bubbles are reasonably popped, go ahead and shape it or put it into your tin and cover it with a plastic bag. It doesn't have to be super fancy. I'm using a Hardee's bag because I am classy. I like to let that proof for about 2.5 hours. When the oven is preheating, I like to add in a dish of water. This allows steam into the oven, and then I just go ahead and I bake for about 35 minutes at 425 Fahrenheit, and I think that's around 120 Celsius. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I really hope that this helps you feel more comfortable with making your own bread. And once again, if you have a better way or a different way, I would love to hear from you in the comments. I am working on a lot of content right now to make sure that we all have something to watch that is not nerve-wracking and heartbreaking. Not trying to ignore the situation, I'm just trying to make sure that we don't become so enveloped that it breaks us. There will be more Daisy cuddles in the vlogs coming up. She's actually sitting right next to me. If you noticed the blonde in my hair, That's coming up in a video. This is not the end result. The reason my hair is up is because this is not what I wanted to film. I'll explain in that video. There's gonna be yarn, there's gonna be more baking. I'm really excited. I hope you guys are too. If you have any requests of something that you'd like to see in the near future, drop it in the comments below. Please make sure to hit subscribe. Tell me about your bread making adventures. Don't forget to find the magic in the small things.